Greetings friends, Forrest Woolman, the foreman, back with you here at Electric Bike Report. And so today I'm going to talk with you about the Xprit Shuttle. The Xprit Shuttle is a Class 3 e-bike with up to 28 mile per hour pedal assistance. And we had 160 miles that we put on this bike to really learn the ins and outs of it, its performance and how it tested in our variety of tests that we did with it. And we were surprised before and after what we found. We also discovered a little secret about the suspension. So stay with us here and I'll tell you some more about the Xprit Shuttle. The Xprit Shuttle is a Class 3 e-bike. It's got pedal assistance that takes you up to 28 miles per hour. That's courtesy of the Bafang 750 watt motor in the rear wheel here. And supplying that power is this 19 amp battery here at the front. The battery range is pretty good, gets you between 20 and 50 miles depending on your speed that you're going. The bike's got other nice accessories here, an LED that you can plug your smartphone into to recharge it. You've got a nice smartphone holder here on the handlebars. Plus you've got turn signals, a bright LED headlight and tail light, and even a horn. And one of the things I really like about it too is the thumb throttle switch on the left part of the handlebar, because there were definitely parts where it was easier just to hit that throttle and go. And capping it off here is you've got 20-inch by 4-inch Kenda tires on the front and back, which provide really good traction and handling on smooth roads as well as not so smooth roads. And then finally is this comfy seat. I don't usually sit down a lot on a bike, but this was a seat that was very inviting and I found very comfortable sitting on here. Almost made me want to have this seat on my other bike. Finally, you've got the rear rack here, which is rated at 55-pound cargo capacity. So all in all, this is a really good package in an e-bike. So I highlighted some of the features, including the motor and the battery, and I'm going to round it out now with some of the other specs of the Xprit Shuttle. Now, you've got the Shimano 7-speed, and it's a grip shifter here, and it's got a nice display. It's easy to read, easy to shift gears, so that worked out nice. That goes down to the 14 to 28 tooth rear cassette. We'll talk about the gearing in a little bit, hang on there, and a 52 tooth front chainring. We can talk a little more about that, stay tuned on that. So one of the things I was impressed about was the braking, because the rotors on here, usually you see bigger rotors, but this bike has 160 millimeter rotors, and a brake company I hadn't really dealt with before, Logan Brakes from Cleveland, Ohio, and I was happily surprised with how this thing did when it came to braking and the size of the rotors. That was a nice surprise, one of the surprises we found with the bike. And we'll talk a little bit more about the brake test here in a moment. When it comes to suspension here, you've got the suspension forks, and it's got a lockout. Those worked good for us on the test. And you've got the dual shocks here on the rear. If you're carrying cargo, or if you're a lighter rider, not myself, but a lighter rider, and you want to take a passenger, there is a possibility you can do that. 264 pounds is the rated capacity on this bike. So you want to be careful on that depending on what your weight are and who you're trying to carry or what you're trying to carry. The seat here, super comfortable, 31 inches though from here to the ground. So that's okay if you're on a motorcycle and you don't have to pedal, but if you're say 5'5" or taller, might be a little squishy with the pedaling, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. Basically, this is a good urban cruiser. If you're not going to do a lot of serious pedaling and you're going to rely on the motor a lot, this thing will get you around, and it's a comfy bike and cruises really well. Okay, next up is the Electric Bike Report's brake test. Now at the Electric Bike Report, we do our brake test on a closed course, and we run the same procedure for all the bikes that we test. We get the bike going up to 20 miles per hour top speed, and then we stop it suddenly. We do this 3 times so we can get a good average on the distance that it took this bike to come to a stop. Now, this is a 99-pound bike, and it's got a very powerful 750 watt motor. So stopping power is really important. We were a little bit surprised to see the rotors are only 160 millimeters, whereas other bikes we test usually have 180 millimeter. It's got a dual piston hydraulic brake system on here. And actually, this bike performed well in the brake test, had an average of 20 feet and 9 inches. And so that was good. It let us know this bike has good stopping power to stop this 99-pound bike that's traveling very fast. Another nice surprise out of this is that the brakes are made by the Logan Clutch Company, and we haven't dealt with them before. They're out of Cleveland, Ohio. So it was good to see that we've got a US-based company as part of this bike and to add to our confidence in the ability of stopping this bike safely. Next up is the circuit test. The EBR circuit test is the same course we use for all bikes, and it's a 1-mile loop, and there's 4 right turns and a section that's 30 feet long that's a gradual incline. And so we do this test to really perform how effective the motor is in the pedal assist process. So it's 6 runs total that we do. The first one we do it with the motor shut off, and then we use each of the PAS settings 1 to 5 to see what kind of average speed we get on these laps. And so on the first lap with no motor, even though this is a 99-pound bike, I managed to average 11.3 miles per hour, which is a little under what you would be pedaling on a regular bike, but still not too bad. This thing with the fat tires included did pretty well. Now, real noticeable is you turn on that motor and PAS1, you see a sudden surge. I really noticed that this motor is really contributing to the pedal process, and the average speed for the first lap was 16.8 miles. And so we see a gradual steady increase in the average speed with the other PAS settings. At PAS3, it was over 21 miles per hour, which is a little too fast for some bike paths if you want to stay within the 20 mile per hour limit. But I found PAS3 was the right setting for me for most of the riding I did. PAS4 and 5 go even higher. You get up to 24.3 miles per hour for the average at PAS5. And so as you can see, for an urban bike, this thing can definitely get itself out of the way. The one drawback that I think I would like to see Xprit do something about, though, was when you get up to about 19 miles per hour, there's some ghost pedaling getting involved. But if you are not really relying on pedaling a lot and going to use the throttle more, probably not going to notice it. It's not going to bother you. And this is an urban bike. It's not something that you're going to go out and really actively pedal like a regular bike. So not too much of a problem there. But all in all, this bike has great acceleration and can definitely get out of the way and get you safely in the traffic on the city streets. Next up, I'm going to talk about the range test. Here at Electric Bike Report, we do 2 tests measuring the range that the battery can provide power to the motor. Now, the first one involves the minimum pedal assistance, that is the PAS1, and the second one involves the maximum PAS, that is PAS5. Now, in the first test, the results came up pretty close to what the folks at Xprit gave us about the range, and we got almost 51 miles out of this bike before we lost power that was effective enough to operate the pedal assistance. Similar result when it came to PAS5. We got over 24 miles out of this bike before the battery began to drop off and stop providing effective power for the bike. Now, keep in mind this is a 750 watt motor, so if you have experience with e-bikes and you think there's something about the range that doesn't seem right, this motor's designed to take you to a high rate of speed quickly in a city environment, as opposed to a casual cruising. So you match that with this 19.2 amp hour battery. The two work together pretty well, providing necessary power to get this bike where you need to go. We figure since the average city commute is not going to be even 24 miles, you can probably get 2 or 3 days of rides out of this thing before you need to charge it. So all in all, our range test came pretty close to the range test that the manufacturer came up with. And now we're going to talk about the hill climb test. Hill climbing can be, let's just say, a life-changing endeavor when you're riding a bike, which makes owning an e-bike all the better. Now for our hill climbing test, we use a section called Hellhole. And the name is pretty fitting because if you saw this hill, you'd understand why. It's 1/3 of a mile long, and it's got an average 12% grade, and it's really meant to push the bike to the limit to see what it can deliver when it comes to climbing on a hill. Now, not all e-bikes that we test make it to the top of this hill. There's actually 2 tests that we do. The first one is the throttle test. That is, we start from the bottom and we use only the throttle to get us to the top. And the second test is the pedal assistance. We use the maximum PAS and we help pedal the bike up to the hill to see if it can make it to the top. Now, we time both of the rides and we also come up with an average miles per hour. And so happy to say that this Xprit Shuttle made it to the top of the hill in both the throttle test and on the pedaling test. For the throttle test, it made it to the top in 1 minute and 36 seconds with an average speed of 11.3 miles per hour, which is good in comparison to bikes like this. And for pedal assistance test, this bike made it to the top in 1 minute and 12 seconds with an average speed of 15.1 miles per hour. So it's good to see that this bike not only has the power to accelerate and get you up and going on the city streets, but it's also got the power to get you up and going on the hills. So in conclusion, we found that the Xprit Shuttle really has a lot going for it, beginning with the powerful motor, the battery that provides good long-range distance. You've got the suspension forks and the dual shock rear to handle weight and any rough things you might encounter on the road. Importantly, you've got the brakes. The Logan brakes work great in stopping this thing. And when you're traveling at a higher rate of speed like you are on this thing, that's really important. So really appreciated that. Also the other little amenities too. The grip shifter worked really well, helping us with changing gears on the derailleur, as well as the turn signals. You don't usually see that on any bike, so that was a nice addition. The bright LED lights. The one thing that I would like to see maybe changed a little or something offered as an option is a seat that sits a little bit higher, so a rider of my height doesn't have as much discomfort pedaling it in the long term. And also if they could do something about the ghost pedaling, maybe put a bigger chain ring on there or put a different cassette on the rear. But all in all, you look at this thing and the all-terrain tires on the front and back, I could see putting this thing in the back of my truck and maybe taking it up to the mountains and riding around on some of the dirt trails. So this bike really has a lot going for it. And I think that this bike will really meet the needs of a lot of riders. So if you found this video helpful, please click like and subscribe to this page if you haven't already. Also, you can follow the link below to our website and the full detailed in-depth report on this bike, as well as links to the current pricing on this bike. And if you have any questions, you can also leave them at the bottom there and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So until next time, I hope to see you out there on the trail sometime. This is Forrest Woolman, the foreman, reminding you to keep your hands on the grips, your feet on the pedals, and your eyes on the road, and I'll see you next time.